phone just to get out of bed. Get home every evening and history's repeating. Turning off my phone 'cause it's hurting my chest. Yeah, and heaven knows I'm not helpless. Yeah, but what can I do? I can't see the use in me crying if I'm not even trying to make the change I wanna see. I can't sit and hope, I can't just sit and pray that I can find a love when all I see is pain. Falling to my knees, and though I do believe, I can't just breathe, baby, breathe. I can't just breathe, baby, breathe. And heaven knows I'm not helpless. But what can I do? Yeah. Can't see the use in me crying if I'm not even trying to make the change I wanna see. I can't sit and hope, I can't just sit and pray.
All right, let's give it up for our young people again. We're not going to let that music stop the energy. All the speakers who are here, if you all can join us, we are so excited to kick off June as Gun Violence Awareness Month in the city of Detroit. Let's give it up for ourselves for coming together for such an important cause. We stand today in solidarity with cities all across the country who have declared June as Gun Violence Awareness Month. We also come together today to honor all of the victims and survivors of gun violence. We remember those who have lost their lives, and we also stand in solidarity with the families, the friends, the loved ones who continue to bear the physical and emotional scars of the senseless violence that we see in our city. And so today, we pause to shine a bright light on our city. We wrap our arms around the families, the victims, and the survivors with love, with peace, with joy, with encouragement, right here in the city of Detroit. And we want all of you all to know that we stand with you, that we hear you, and that each and every one of us are committed to this work to end gun violence in the city of Detroit. So we all know that the tragic toll that gun violence takes on our city and our communities. We see the headlines. This morning, I woke up to a story of more unfortunate, senseless violence in our city. And so we see the stories. We hear the headlines and see the headlines of lives that are cut short, families that are torn apart, and neighborhoods that are left devastated by the impact of gun violence. And we cannot, as a community, continue to allow this to happen in our city. And that is why we are here today, to recommit ourselves to the fight against gun violence, to recommit ourselves, and to say that we are not going to normalize the level of violence that we see in our community. Gun violence kills roughly 120 Americans a day. And the leading cause of death for African-American men between the ages of 18 and 34 is homicide with the firearm. We are losing the next generation of leaders, of community builders, of organizers to gun violence, and it must stop. But one of the things that gets me motivated and encouraged is I know that we are not powerless in this fight and in the midst of this crisis. We are not powerless. As a community, we can't come together like we're doing today to take a stand against gun violence and work towards a brighter, safer future for everyone. Together, we can take back our blocks, neighborhood by neighborhood, zip code by zip code, family by family, child by child, just like we are committing to do today. But first and foremost, we must, and this is something that Pro-Tem and myself advocate at the council table for all the time, we must recognize that gun violence is a public health crisis. It is a public health crisis, and we must treat it as such. We must invest in programs and initiatives that address the root cause of violence, including poverty, lack of opportunity, and mental health. We must invest in our neighborhoods, our schools, and our youth, and provide opportunities for a brighter future. In addition, we must ensure that our laws and policies are designed to keep our communities safe. We must come together to advocate for common sense gun safety. Let's give it up for that. But ultimately, the most powerful tool that we have to fight against gun violence is each other. Detroit, we are stronger together than we are apart. We are stronger together than we are apart. And I'm a firm believer that it takes a village. It takes elected officials. It takes law enforcement. It takes organizers. It takes community. It takes the nonprofit sector. It takes people with titles and without titles to develop our young people and to produce productive and viable, strong neighborhoods in our city. So it truly takes all of us. We all must take responsibility for creating a culture of peace and nonviolence in our communities. This means speaking out and up against violence and protecting those who have been impacted by it. It also means reaching out to our neighbors, building relationships, and working to create a safer, more just, and equitable Detroit for all. So let us all continue to do our work. I am so excited to announce that we are kicking off 10 years of occupying the corner of Detroit. 10 years this summer. We encourage you all to get involved. Both of the co-chairs of the task force on gun violence are here today to speak. We just want everyone to continue their action and their commitment to ending gun violence. And thank you all so much for being here. So before we bring up our speakers, we're going to just pause if Mosaic can come up. And as they sing, just take a moment to reflect on those who may have lost their life, who are impacted by gun violence, and then we'll move forward with our speakers.
To bring some love in here today, yeah. Father, Father, we don't need to escalate. You see, war is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate. You know we gotta find a way to bring some love in here today. Oh, picket lines, sister, and picket signs, sister. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see. Oh, what's going on? What's going on? Tell me what's going on. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going Tell me what's going on. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on?
All right, let's give it up again for the Mosaic Youth Choir. We appreciate the young people for being a part of this event. We're now going to move to hear from the Chief of Police, James White. We truly appreciate the partnership. And again, let's give it up to all of our Detroit Police Department, men and women who serve us so well in the city. And we will now hear remarks from our Chief of Police.
Thank you, President Sheffield. And thank all of you for taking time out today to be here. I really appreciate your relentless pursuit to solutions to this gun violence. I just want to take a couple minutes and reflect on the Mosaic group and the dancers that were up here just a moment ago, and how apropos that song is all these years later. That song originally was written in the 70s, and it applies today as it did in the 70s. Sadly, we don't reflect enough and talk enough about the victims. We talk a lot about process. We talk a lot about root cause analysis, and we certainly understand the importance of that. We spend a lot of time on the root cause of crime and violence. But at the end of the day, the level of violence that we see in our country and our city is unacceptable. The gun violence we are seeing in our community and in this country is at numbers that we have never seen, and that's real. We study data daily in this department. We know this community doesn't want this violence. We know that this community is in a constant pursuit of solutions. If you use a gun in our community, even though we know the root causes, we know what drives it, we know that mental health, we know that certainly opportunities, but there has to be a line that if a gun is used in our community, there has to be accountability. We can do two things at once. We can develop strategies on those root causes. We could dismantle those pathways to prison, but we must have accountability for crime. And we're not going to make an apology for locking folks up that use a gun in our community and victimize our community. Amen. I want to share a few things with you about just gun stats. As of today, in Detroit, 110 homicides. 110 homicides in our city. That's unacceptable. And that's up 1.9% from 2022. 323 shootings. Non-fatal shootings, 323, and some are so senseless, I won't even spend time talking about some of them, but a few that jump off the page at me were what happened over the past week. We had multiple people shot at barbecues and parties, multiple people shot celebrating graduations. And when I see that, I think about the fact that what about the victims? What about people who won't get an opportunity to be city council president? To be police chief, police officer, school teacher, activists. They won't get that opportunity because what we don't talk about is in many instances, the person who is shot isn't the intended target. Right. It's just someone indiscriminately shooting because guns make folks feel tough. And I'm not talking about Second Amendment. I'm talking about illegal gun-toting folks or these people who are legally carrying guns but become much tougher, much taller, much stronger because they got a gun in their pocket. Juveniles, age 17 and younger, shot in 2023. 36, 6 of which were killed. 30 non-fatally shot, but many of that 30 are suffering from serious injuries. We've had 2 mass shootings, and by definition, a mass shooting is a shooting where 4 people or more are shot at one time. In Detroit, we've had 2 mass shootings, 13,000 block of Penrod and the 10,300 block of Greensboro this year. 2 of those victims were killed. It's not just a Detroit problem, it's a national problem that's not getting enough attention. No one's really wanting to talk about it. We see mass shootings now. I remember when we first started seeing mass shootings, it dominated television. Now we had a mass shooting now for sports and weather. No one's even focusing on it. In this country, we have sold 59 million guns since 2020. Wow. And that's according to the Small Arms Analytics and Forecasting. 2020, 2021, and 2022 were the highest gun sales on record. 22.8 million in 2020, 19 million in 21, and 16.4 million in 22. Now, Chief, why are you talking about gun sales? Because with gun sales comes responsibility. When you've got that number of guns in a community, you've got to have that level of responsibility. You can't take that gun to the club and leave it in the trunk, then the car gets broken into and somebody gets the gun and uses it in our community. It comes with serious responsibility. So we've got 50 million guns in our community. We've got people that look like me that are more likely to be victims of gun violence than to graduate college. That's right. Think about that. And we've got to get serious about this violence. So I want to thank all of you for being serious about this violence. And as President Sheffield says, it takes a village, and I would argue that this is our village. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Chief. We will now bring up the President Pro Tem of the Detroit City Council, James Tate.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Council President, for continuing your, as the Chief said, relentless pursuit to ensure that we have gun violence removed from our community. This issue is very personal for me. Like many of you, we've had members of our family who have been impacted by gun violence. Some of us who are standing here today have been directly impacted by gun violence. In addition to my personal impact, professionally, I worked at Channel 7. I worked in the news media when Columbine happened. And I remember seeing kids jumping out of school classrooms. And I thought, man, it can't get worse than this. That was all those years ago. I'm long removed from that job. After that, I was blessed to have an opportunity to work at the Detroit Police Department in the Office of Public Information. And I would go out to some of the worst scenes. And you would never forget the scream that a mother or another family member exudes when they walk up on a crime scene and understanding that their family member has been either harmed or unfortunately killed. You'll never forget that. And I made a commitment that if I ever was in another position or any position, or even at that moment, that I would do everything I can to address this issue of gun violence in our community. And so on City Council, we started the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force with my former colleague, Santil Jenkins. And thankfully, we've been able to continue that spirit along the way. We have not stopped.
That's right,
We're going to continue. And I know some people say, well, if you're just sitting around having meetings, well, what's the use? What are you doing? Right. Well, if you look around, the movement is growing.
That's right.
You can never get from A to Z in one step. You've got to continue to move forward. And I'm so thankful for each and every one of these folks that are on the stage today, each and every one of you who are joining us, all of you who are watching on the television screens as well. So thankful for you in ensuring that we're not allowing this issue of gun violence to just become just another story in the news, because this is impact. When we talk about when we talk about the fact that Black Americans are 10% higher than white Americans from being victims of gun violence. Yeah. That's an issue. That's the issue. And when we talk about, back in the days, Madam President, we were talking about how a drug addiction, it was a scourge within our community. It was a very big scourge within our community. And people would just call folks just criminals, and they would call them addicts. And then it started coming outside of the urban community and started impacting middle America. And then those people who were criminals and addicts, they became people who had health concerns. Right. And it was true, that's exactly who they were. Yeah. But so were those folks in the city of Detroit and all those other urban cities who had these same addictions. And now we're seeing the same thing when it comes to gun violence. We've always, unfortunately, I'm not gonna say always, for a long period of time, we've had these so-called mass shootings, but they didn't call them that.
That's right.
Just call them, they just shooting each other. That's all they called it. Didn't have a term. But once it started invading middle America, then now we've got to come up with a solution. I thought that was going to be the case, but you have these gatekeepers in high positions who are doing everything they can to ensure that those who pad their pockets, yeah, I'll say it, those who pad the pathway for them to continue to be in those positions of power, they're protecting them. Yes. And they don't like to talk about the real issue. The real issue is trauma. Yeah. The real issue is mental health concerns. The real issue is poverty. Yeah. The real issue are policies that are purposefully harming disproportionately communities of color, black communities, Detroit, and others. That's the issue. And so when we take away all, and we strip away all of those ideological feelings about this and that, it boils down to trauma, pain, hurt. And if we don't deal with that trauma, pain, and hurt, it's going to continue to spread. Absolutely. We can say 1, 2, and 3, but if we got 5, 6, and 7 who are still going through it, we'll just continue in this cycle. And so I just, again, encourage each and every one of you to continue to grow in this fight, in this effort. Grab somebody else. Work with your family members. Work with your friends. Go out to the schools. Go out to the parks. No matter where you are, do not allow this message of gun violence prevention to leave your tongue. God bless you all, and we will continue to keep this movement going forward. Bless you.
All right. Thank you so much, President Pro Tem. We will now bring up my colleague, Councilmember Durhal, District 7.
Good morning to everyone. I want to thank Chief White, both of my amazing colleagues who I partner with on the gun violence task force. As I was getting ready this morning, I was thinking of just some things to say, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to keep it real, as they say. Yes, sir. My thoughts go out to the victims of gun violence, whether that was someone who was in front of the gun or behind the gun. Yeah. I think oftentimes folks don't understand. We talk about the hurt, we throw out these catchphrases, and I've learned a lot by sitting as a co-chair for the gun violence task force of what really drives folks to violence. So when we talk about lack of education, we talk about lack of employment, we talk about lack of opportunity, we talk about lack of empathy, lack of sympathy of what is going on in our neighborhoods. Those are catalysts. We talk about mental health, but we don't talk about cognitive behavior or conflict resolution. Yeah. Reports of someone shooting somebody over a Facebook post shows you how desensitized we have become in our communities to gun violence, to guns in general. We talked about tools such as shot spotters. I remember when that came, and we were having conversations of guns and folks reporting shootings. In different communities, if they see one gun, whether it's a handgun, not just an AK, there's an all-out blitz. We have become desensitized to violence. We have become desensitized to guns in our community, and that needs to stop. But the only way that can stop is if we come together. See, I learned what we do at the table is important. It's important to gather in resources, but it's most important for us connecting the folks who are on the ground every single day to those resources. You might have heard the term now, community violence intervention. It is not a fake term. This is not a game. That's right. These are folks who are on the ground every single day in places that we are not. They are not at the council table. They are not in our patrol cars. They are in the neighborhood with folks saying, hey, put these guns down. Hey, you don't have to shoot them over this. Let me bring you guys together. They are identifying with the real problems. They see the poverty firsthand. They see the anger. They see the hurt. They see the pain firsthand. So all our efforts, my team's efforts, is to put resources in the hands of those who can get directly to the folks to stop this violence, okay? And that is only gonna happen, though, again, if we continue to work together, understand each other, and really, this is not a game. We talk about folks shot last night on the eve of this press conference. That's not a game to those families who have to wake up this morning and they have somebody lost, or for a perpetrator who has to now go to jail and will become more of a criminal inside than he was before he went. That's right. So I am honored to be here today, but I'm sad to be here today because I don't want to have to be here telling us not to kill each other. My God. But with that, let's continue to work. Today, you're probably going to hear from some other folks that drive me to do what I do. I tell them they're the experts, not me. They'll tell you these young boys and women need transportation. They need food. They need housing. Most of the carjackings happen because some of those folks don't have anywhere to live. They need these resources. It's not an excuse for violence, but we have to realize where we are and use real solutions to be able to solve it. So thank you all for being here. God bless you, and let's keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, Member Durhal. We will now bring up our Deputy Mayor, Deputy Mayor Bettison.
Wow. I mean, the speakers before me have said it. And so, Council President, 10 years in a row, occupying the corner, Pro-Tem Tate, Councilmember Durhal, Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, just sticking with it. And so what I will say to you all is, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
That's right.
We got to be here to really support each other. This will not be easy. It's not easy. I did 27 years with the Detroit Police Department. Chief White, that's my guy. And, in the 90s, we had this issue. And so with, I think the chief said 50 million guns. How many guns you say? 50 million. And so responsible gun ownership is a key. Now, one of the things that I haven't heard mentioned yet was, we talk about illegal guns, we talk about CPLs, but to everybody within the sound of my voice, even if you got a CPL, if you're getting high, if you got too much to drink, it impacts your judgment.
Right.
At that point, your license is not valid because it's illegal for you to be occupying it because you're not in your right mind.
Right.
If you talk to any of our homicide detectives, what they will tell you and what they told me, because I wanted to get to some answers. I say, so what do you really see? I say, when you interviewing the shooter, what do they say? Say, well, initially, depending on when they're apprehended, they're high. A couple days later, they're a complete different person. They realize the world of trouble that they're in. To the rap music, the rap industry, just the industry in general that celebrates the shooter, that celebrates a culture of being a user. Every song I hear, they talking about, I took a half a pill, I'm out for a whole pill, the Percocet, the Molly, all of this. Our young folks are being influenced by this, so you got 13, 14-year-olds out here that are high off pills. Right. And then they have access to guns. And so with us all, we have to be courageous.
Yes, sir.
We know people in our family who high.
Yeah.
They got a gun. We know people in our family that suffer from mental illness. Mm-hmm. We know people that should be committed. Right. And if we don't get them the help that they need and are courageous enough to do some of the things that it takes courageous leadership to do, then we fail them. So I just want to thank you all. And one of the things when I pulled up and got out my car, when I looked at the crowd, I saw bona fide real folks who are out here doing the work in violence prevention. I see community members that are here, that have been here, and that are really doing the work. And I just want to thank my council president. I want to thank Detroit City Council, Pro-Tem Tate, Councilmember Durhal, because the mayor's office, the administration can't do anything. We can't do it. We can come up with some ideas, but it's collaboratively, but we can't fund nothing without the approval of your Detroit City Council. So let's give it up to your Detroit City Council. So I thank y'all. I thank y'all. And so I'm in it with you. Hey, we're going to be out here into community violence intervention, the mayor's office, and your Detroit City Council. We plan on, pushing up and pushing out $10 million to fund this work, this important critical space this year. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. We will now hear from Mia Reed from the Charles W. Reed Community Help Center.
Hello, everybody. Most of the people standing here have already given you the facts. It's not a whole lot more to say. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper because I want to touch your empathy and your compassion. I want to make it real, not just a hashtag, okay? How many people out here know somebody that has been murdered due to gun violence? How many people, keep your hands up if you and your family have been impacted by gun violence? Put your hand down if you are okay with someone in your family being murdered due to gun violence. If you have your hand up, that means we are all in this together. That means we all feel it. I know how a lot of the mothers out here feel that have lost their children to gun violence, or their niece, or their nephew, or their cousin, or their friend, or their granddaughter, or their grandson. I know, because my firstborn and only son was taken by gun violence. When somebody dies, we grieve. Grief is normal. I am a licensed clinical mental health therapist, and I can tell you, grief is normal. We will all experience it at some point in our life. It is a part of life. However, murder is not. Right. We should not have to experience the death of our children. It is not the natural order of life, and we are suffering. We're suffering deep. There's trauma involved, and guess what? Ask yourself, the people that do not go get help, what are they doing with that hurt? It goes back into the community. Those children and their siblings that are hurting, that do not get help, what are they doing with that hurt? It goes back into the community. So Councilman Durhal said, he mentioned CBT. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's something that I do continuously. I can tell you guys, there's a stigma for getting help in our community. You need to drop it. I had it too. I am so glad that I got the help that I needed. Prayer, therapy, and faith. You can have God too. Yeah, right. Because I do. So I'm going to back up, and I'm going to finish. Not only was it my son, but it was also my mom's sister's grandchild, too. It was a double homicide that our family had to deal with. 2 children murdered due to gun violence. Blacks are disproportionately impacted by gun violence and are 10 times more likely to die than whites. We know this. So what are we going to do? We're here. The media's here. Our law enforcement is here. All of the community organizations that are always here. Our president, Council Mary Sheffield, she has been occupying the block for 10 years. Everybody is giving the same message. What are you going to do too? Join us. Sometimes you can't wait for other people to help you. This is our community. You're going to have to join in. I can tell you this. The leading cause of death for children right now is gun violence. Know that. Let that sink in.
We will now hear from Ray Winan, CEO of Detroit Friends and Family.
Good morning, Detroit. President Sheffield, Councilman Tate, and Durhal, appreciate y'all for the Violence Prevention Task Force, as well as you, Deputy Mayor and Chief White. My call to action is the words that you just used, Council President, being recommitted. Being recommitted to this work, being recommitted to strategies, being recommitted to the people in the community. My message is for the shooters. The shooters is always the brokest. Stop crashing out. It's real tangible resources, right? We looking in different neighborhoods to work with folks. Violence is an infectious disease that's preventable because it's predictable. No different from HIV, the coronavirus, and every other public health epidemic disease. That's right. We have folks in the community that's tired, that need a way out. So when we talk about those resources, right, those things have to be real and tangible. And today, the words that I was hearing from our elected officials, right, our chief of police, made me realize that this is a moment in history. Been in this city all my life, and we haven't put together a comprehensive strategy from the streets to the suites. That's right. In my 13 years of doing this work until the last year. And so, with that being said, I'm recommitted and I'm recommitting my team. Right. And thank you.
All right, we are winding down. We have next speaking Pastor Barry Randolph, Church of the Messiah. Come on, Pastor Barry. Silence the violence. Silence the violence. Silence the violence.
All right, I'm a short man, so I'm going to be real short. So I just want to say I want to thank everybody for the work that they do. I want to thank the council president for what she's been doing ever since she's been elected, to our other city officials, to the police chief, to the deputy mayor. June 17th, Church of the Messiah will host its 17th annual or 16th annual Silence the Violence March and Rally. It will be at 10 o'clock, corner of East Grand Boulevard in Lafayette. We've been doing this for a long time. We honor the innocent victims of gun violence at this march. We bring together the people who do all of the community intervention work when it comes to gun violence. We bring together our local government, the block clubs, average citizens to say enough is enough. Now, I'm a preacher, and I believe a virgin had a baby. If a virgin can have a baby, we can eradicate gun violence. I believe in the impossible, so we can do the impossible. And let me just say one last thing, that when people tell you, we've been doing this march for 16 years, and we get people who stop and say, Pastor Barry, marches don't stop gun violence. The march is not to stop gun violence. The march honors the innocent victims of gun violence. The same way when you go to a cancer walk, the walk don't cure cancer. It honors those who died, and it brings together those who are willing to conquer the disease and beat the disease. We can beat the disease of gun violence. We can end this if we put our minds to it. So it's up to us to be able to do it. June 17th, 10 o'clock, Church of the Messiah, East Grand Boulevard in Lafayette. One last thing, it's in 9 other cities across the state of Michigan. When we did this last year at the church, we had over 1,000 people show up. And all of these people were like, we need to take this to Lansing and to Ann Arbor, to Grand Rapids, to Saginaw. And so they will be duplicating what we doing in Detroit. It's going to start at the epicenter for all of the work that the people in the city of Detroit are doing. We go in this. God is good.
All right. And then last but not least, we're going to bring up Zoe, who is representing Force Detroit.
How everybody doing? Standing here, I was just in prison 4 years ago. Coming out of prison, I came in contact with organizations that do for the community. My brother brought me to meet our executive director, Alea Harvey Quinn. We was at a gun violence prevention conference. Throughout the past few years, we have been doing research throughout the nation, and we've been doing research in our city. In prison, I read something in a book. It was an old ancient African proverb that said, "The village that neglects the child will burn so that the child can feel is warmth. We have a systemic issue of investment in our destruction through music, through media, through education, through the social determinants of health, right? Yeah. Our organization has been advocating to develop an ecosystem to deal with the problem, because we don't believe that it's one all be all solution. Right. We don't believe that it is one hero. We don't believe in the hero. We believe in the village. Yes. We believe in the village. So we refuse to tear each other down when it comes to saving souls. That's right. And we are committed to developing an ecosystem where the village plays its part, an office of CVI, community intervention, that's staffed with competent employees, individuals who are out here doing this work, trained, competent to do the work that need to be done, because what has been done to us as a people throughout history is sad. Every time we tried to do something, we had Tulsa, Oklahoma. We had Black Bottom. We had the Panthers taking care of our children before they went to school. We had it. It was systemically dismantled. And we have to work together to systemically reconstruct what community looks like. Reconstruct what humanity looks like. That's our responsibility, and we take it serious. We are very appreciative to all our partners. The public officials, community members, the youth that even give us their time to talk to us about their issues, and that will even stop doing something because they want better. This is history, but we know what our history done been. It's been dismantled. Our leaders done been killed. Movements done died. We have to operate as a village, and it has to be an ecosystem. The resources have to be there. I can't keep telling somebody to stop doing something, and there's nothing there for them. There's nothing there to occupy their time. I can't tell a person who's constantly getting provoked and trolled on social media, who've never been taught emotional intelligence, who never went through a CBT curriculum, how to manage that just with words. We need to have something in our schools. We need to have CBT in our schools, because more than doing a math problem, you got to deal with human beings that's going to constantly disrespect you and offend you, and you have to be prepared to deal with that. We have to teach our children something different. They need a special and unique education to combat what has been done to us throughout history. Right. And we believe at Force Detroit, as well as all our partners, our public officials, law enforcement, our community members, faith-based, it's going to take all of us to reconstruct what's been tore up. And we start by looking at the social determinants of health. We start with the resources. They have to be there. It cannot be fake. It has to be transparent. It has to be real, because our people have been given hope time after time, and they done killed them and destroyed the systems that they done created. We cannot let that happen this time. Thank you.
All right. We again thank all of the speakers for being here. I did also want to recognize Skrill from Force Detroit. Just wave your hand. Barbara Collins is up here with us. She's been on the front line for years. Daryl, who is representing Fighting the Good Fight. Daryl, let's give it up for Daryl. And also Marvin Cotton is here as well, representing Better Not Broken. We appreciate you. And Bishop Ellis joined us. What a surprise. Bishop, you know I'm going to have you come up and end us with a prayer. Come on, Bishop. We gotta. If you can come up and just bless us with a prayer as we close
Thank
out.
you.
Yes.
Thank you, my sister. She sent me an email, so I show up when she sends me emails. Thank you all for coming. And again, I say to you that as Nehemiah had a vision and had a concern about the walls in Jerusalem that were torn down, and he prayed to God and asked God to do something. And God said, I'm going to send you to do something. We are the hands, we are the feet of God. So God's not going to come down here and clean up anything. We've got to do it. Because as I tell Greater Grace all the time, God's not going to do for you what you can do for yourself. So as we have met here, I'm going to pray, but after we get done praying, let's get up and let's begin the work. Lord, we thank you for this gathering. We thank you for all of these who are stakeholders and gatekeepers in this city and in this community. And we pray even for all of those who have been fighting the good fight for so long, and sometimes they get tired and sometimes they get worn, and sometimes it seems that when we take one step forward, we end up going 2 steps backwards. But help us to hold on to our faith and to fight the good fight of faith, knowing that in your own time and season, a change is going to come. Now we ask you to inhabit this place, this city, every school, every street, every rec center, every park, and bring safety and healing to our community, and help most of all to change our minds toward each other, that we will not be fearful of each other, but we will see how we can help and love one another, so for fulfilling your great commandment, love your neighbors as you love yourself. As we leave this day, please keep us in your loving care. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you all.
That would conclude the press conference. Thank you so much for coming out again. Thank you to everyone who spoke this morning. You all have a blessed day. We fired up? Fired up. Fired up. Let's do the work, you all. Thank you all.